All right, so this is going to be a session on order books and bids, asks, deals, and so on, and kind of trying to arrive at a very composable framework for representing requests and offers for storage and all of that kind of stuff. And this is not very prescriptive, but it's rather more vision oriented and emphasizing kind of the direction that DeFi has taken in the last year and a half, and just the explosion that was facilitated by arriving at good primitives. The stuff that I want to go through is kind of getting to the utility of these compositional primitives, talking about bids and asks and deals, and kind of where those might be headed, talking a bit about just markets, order books, marketplaces, off-chain verifiability, automatic matching, and then some possibilities that come from updating and reselling deals, and then kind of like market mechanisms like auctions, futures, and so on. So this is meant to be more of an introduction to a lot of these pieces, not how concretely they might get built and so on, but it's just to try and get us all to orient in these directions. So I want to start off with kind of pointing to commodity markets. One of the big things that Filecoin is doing is just making Spacetime a commodity, and just digital storage is today not really a commodity. You have to kind of create all these service contracts and so on. It's not actually a thing you can reason about the way that you might other resources. But we may be able to get there with all of the components that people are sort of building and create much better markets. So one of the big things that is true about all these commodity markets is that they create structures that, again, are very composable, have many different kinds of entities, and when there's a problem to solve, some entity will emerge to sort of solve that problem in the market. And so the broader market is really decomposed into a bunch of smaller components and smaller marketplaces with all kinds of actors all over the place that do different things depending on circumstances. And the DeFi world is kind of like this as well, right? So there's a ton of stuff going on, many different kind of problems being solved through well-composed contracts, and this kind of explosion in the design space has been made possible by just being able to kind of make a thing, ship it, and then let other teams go and solve some other problem downstream, as opposed to trying to kind of build one large thing. So the long-term goal, so it's been kind of like a long-term goal for Filecoin to get to really make these proper markets, right? Make a proper storage market, make a proper retrieval market, and so on. As you can think of, the requests for storage, or the request for a piece of data as bids and asks on a market for either storage space or for the data, the relevant data that parties are looking for. And like today, it's pretty primitive. Like you only have deals represented on the chain. We had implemented a lot of the order book dynamics with bids, asks, and so on, and we ended up ripping those out, and just in order to kind of get to launch and so on. But it's time to kind of go back and revisit a lot of this stuff and start using it. Yeah, so this is kind of the old Filecoin paper has kind of a lot of it is structured in terms of these orders. So how these end up being composed might vary depending on the market and depending on the application. Meaning, what we ideally could arrive at is some very straightforward definition of what an ask is, what a bid is, and what a deal is, that are all extensible to represent the different components that parties might want. So, for example, some requests for storage might prescribe a price, or that might not be there. It might be a request on a specific region, and there might be other features that people care about, right? So things like certain certifications around the storage, so like HIPAA compliance and so on, or a miner might be offering some like added services along with the proposal, right? And so the one of the things that's true about all these asks, bids, and potential deals is that they need some way of encoding a feature space that clients and miners might care about, but that not all clients and not all miners care about. So it's the ability to kind of have a very compressed, verifiable offer for the resource that enables parties to kind of describe some component here that they might care about, and only they, and that allows the market to segment. I'll describe that a little bit more later. But you can also think of these market orders all being dealt with in different markets, and you don't actually need to connect these. So you can think of these markets as, so right now there's like one market which is on chain, and like that's how we're producing storage deals. And there's kind of like not a very well concretized ask and bid mechanism. But you can think of other markets that will start emerging, like with that are off chain. And I think Textile and others are looking at creating markets close to other blockchains. So you have like another blockchain feeding into Filecoin by doing some of the ask and bid matching directly in the other chain, wherever it is where the data is coming from. And we see some of the offers in the Pegasus structure and so on. Like those offers can be seen as kind of asks and bids in the retrieval case. So again, these markets will be different depending on the use case. And we also, Phil Swan and Mael and others are their own kind of versions of markets. And whether we need to connect these or not, it's an open question. I think we can for quite a while like not have to connect them. But if we get the primitives to be the same, then that'll allow a bunch of tools to be shared across the board. And it tends to be that most of the requirements for what people want in these asks and bids are about the same. So again, like the goal with a lot of this is this composability of being able to connect all these pieces once we use kind of like these common primitives. So let's maybe look quickly at a couple of examples in depth and then kind of think more higher level. So in storage, a bid is just simply a request for data storage. An ask is the miner's offer for that data storage. The deal is effectively a contract for the data storage. And so most of the properties that people care about are, hey, like the associated data that we're going to store. And so here, this would be the PCID based on how the deals work today. And although ultimately what people care about fully is like the payload CID, the PCID is an abstraction that is required by the proofs. And then there's notions like the price, the start time and end time, collaterals, and so on. But there's also like a set of other properties that people might care about that already people care about quite a bit, and they're feeding into the reputation market things, like the world region in which the data is going to be stored, content policy, so mutually agreeing upon a policy that governs the content to kind of serve to deal with dispute resolution on bad bets, potentially certifications like HIPAA compliance and others that people might need to require. Then some deals might be self-contractable and some deals may not be. So it may be a key component that a deal needs to be able to be resold between miners, and this would enable miners to kind of migrate and would allow them also to, if you can move your deals and sell them to other miners, then you can, over time, the market might optimize way better because you get to like move things around as opposed to only kind of make a deal in the past and the whole market being stuck with that configuration in the future. And then if you make deals updatable, which is again one big request, if you can change and upgrade the deal data and update it in the future, that then allows these deals, these contracts for data storage, to be able to then be scoped in time. So you could have, so this could yield a structure for these contracts where miners and clients, or miners and other miners, or miners and some other parties can create contracts for Spacetime that have a start time and an end time in the future don't have a CID associated with them yet, but can now be effectively like storage market futures, which might help deal with kind of provisioning space in specific regions and specific places and so on. So you can make a market that's much more, hopefully much more efficient by allowing parties to trade on these data slots in the future. This is kind of like one of the key requirements of the commodity world, the commodity markets and so on, need the ability to be able to reason about these assets at different points in time. And now retrieval is a lot simpler than storage. So, the same kind of basics. In this case, it's not a request for data storage. It's a request, for the spacetime. It's a request for the data itself. And so here, the CIDs that the people care about might be the deal, might be the PCID, or might just be the payload CIDs, or some underlying CIDs that are within a deal. Or hey, by the way, these CIDs might not be at all stored in the Filecoin storage market. These CIDs might be stored in like an IPFS spinning service or some other component. So there's a possibility here that like decoupling these markets and not forcing that the retrieval CIDs are specifically deal PCIDs and so on is a very useful way to make the retrieval market much more be able to leverage it in other applications. And again, different kind of possible properties. I didn't list that many here, but a lot of them have been talked about in the last few days. Like one as an example is being able to kind of have the ability to kind of use prepaid vouchers and so on, where like the payment comes from a third party, like the publisher, as opposed to the party retrieving and so on, right? So then these requests would potentially look different. So one other kind of interesting way to look at this whole space is to think about the kinds of markets that might develop. So for example, the most straightforward thing, like the thing that most people have been talking about so far is going from on-chain to off-chain. So like that's one straightforward view. But there's other kinds of features that might be pretty relevant. So just looking at it in terms of the number of market participants against the like deal size or complexity of the deal already yields very different categories of markets. So when there's not that many market participants and the deals are small, or the complexity of the deals are very small, you can get away. You can get really far with just basic deal defaults. So this is what's sort of happening now, and some of the reputation system stuff that's happening will just kind of enable parties to agree on the basic properties of a deal and kind of make those deals that way. As soon as you start increasing the size, though, like if you get into terabytes or petabytes, then at that point, clients care a lot more about where the data is going to be, who the miners really are, what kind of other services they're going to allow, if they need to do any kind of offline shipping of hard drives. That's a much bigger deal. So you go from like the basic defaults in the tools to now needing marketplaces, and marketplaces that are not automated. A lot of times these are kind of more oriented towards humans, where and kind of like we saw Phil Swan as an example a couple of days ago, as kind of like a marketplace where you can see all the different miners, you can see even their picture, and you can see their the properties that they're kind of proposing and so on. And when there is high complexity to these deals, and you have a lot of or they're really big, this sort of matters. Like the clients and the miners are going to be able to transact with each other are not that many. There'll be kind of like tens to maybe hundreds, like probably tens. And so at that point, and the deals themselves are so big and so valuable. There's so much at stake here, and so much cost associated with each deal, that at that point, the parties will want to know much more about each other. So kind of marketplaces start making sense. Now, in another part of the axis, if the deals are not very complex, like they don't require a bunch of complex features, is mostly basic, but there's a lot of market participants and the data is small, then you can start doing automated clearinghouses and exchanges, right? So this is where some of the stuff that we're talking about a couple of days ago of like automatic orders, like where an order is verifiable and live, and kind of like a miner is offering something, or a client is bidding on something, and the other party just being able to take that offer without having to kind of like run into a 2 round trip timed protocol. Like that's the kind of thing that would live there, or some of the work that other groups like Textile and so on are doing with other chains and bridges and historicals and so on. It also fits this kind of like clearinghouse model where you have a ton of requests for storage, or like basically bids on bits and storage coming from some source, and you're feeding that into kind of some small market for with a set of miners that want to participate with that in that kind of subset of the space, and kind of clearing between them. Now, once you start getting into like larger deals or complexity, or like futures, or and so on, then you get into like automated agents and like the much more sophisticated part of the market, and that's where a lot of maybe like the DeFi style contracts will be really useful. And that's like we won't have a lot of this for a while, so it will kind of evolve into a few marketplaces and a few kind of like automated clearinghouses, and then later on kind of going into automated agents. And here, an automated clearinghouse is really just a fancy word, or kind of like a commodity markets oriented word of saying just a program that's consuming bids and asks and matching them together automatically. And you can sort of see that the bottom two are very related to humans, and so the end products end up being about appealing to either the clients directly, and being able to kind of show people some UIs, or appealing to the tool developers. So like making very simple interfaces and so on for developers, pulling together tools. Like that's kind of like the target users. And then above, the target users are sort of programs, meaning these other processes. That's really where kind of like the realm of DeFi comes in, and so on. And sort of expect a lot of that to be a big part of the Filecoin world in the future. And don't know exactly when, but it's sort of dependent on a lot of the things that people are talking about getting implemented. But yeah, that's sort of like where that's headed. So you can do, kind of a picture of the world might be something like this, where there are a bunch of different markets with asks, bids, and deals coming out of those markets. Some of these might end up on chain. A lot of them may not, especially in the retrieval side. And most of that stuff is not going to hit the chain. Only kind of the final payment vouchers might. And you can then start looking at some of the other things going on in the ecosystem with this kind of market-oriented view, and say, hey, maybe all of these things have an associated Filecoin market, which is sort of like this bridge component. Or maybe when we talk about retrieval and topologies for retrieval and hubs and so on, maybe all of these things are kind of like a small little market. And whether or not you connect these is again a separate question. Yes, then shifting gears for a moment, here's like some of the stuff that we've been talking about in the last couple of days, like this is ways of collecting information on miners that ends up being fed into markets and marketplaces. Yeah, here's like the Phil Swan example with the various features of the miner. And so it's for these marketplaces especially, it's cool to it's good to look at other very successful worldwide global marketplaces and see kind of what parts of the product might be relevant. So for example, Airbnb has like a very domain specific search where you can filter for the features that the consumers of the marketplace really care about, and you can visually compare a bunch of the offers, right? Like the kind of like service providers. So you could imagine similar kind of domain specific search for a marketplace of miners, like where you can see them plotted in the world, or you can see them see certain visualizations of other properties, like their past history and like the reputation and so on. Then they have like quantifiable ratings, and like that's really useful. We're already there. Like we have a much more sophisticated. We're building towards a much more sophisticated set of ratings. Airbnb, because it's mostly humans transacting with each other, has a whole bunch of qualitative ratings, and there's a lot there because policies and requirements sometimes don't fit, like are very nuanced, and so there's more of a need there. This might be relevant for Filecoin marketplaces where there's huge amounts of data involved. Like, so if a party wants to hire miners to store tens of petabytes, then there might be a lot of qualitative feedback about that relationship that might be relevant to other parties like that. So again, maybe marketplaces are only really relevant when data is above a certain size. And then there's also ways of compressing reputation into a very easy representation that's kind of like part of the network. So these are like simple badges, right? Like, and you create a way of earning, like doing a lot of work over time to earn a very compressed representation of quality, so that the marketplace, people browsing the marketplace, can very quickly and easily navigate to pay for that kind of added service. Then yeah, this is kind of a way of looking at some of the features that I was describing earlier. Like, people may care about, people will definitely care about these kinds of things, but again, this might be only relevant for larger scale storage, less so for small contracts and small applications. And you can sort of see all these features once you kind of encode them into bids, asks, and deals as segmenting the market, right? So you have like a very large market, but once you start kind of narrowing down and you segment it by these kinds of features. As you can think of like UIs that have depth charts and so on that are segmented by some of these features. I see David is come here. I think we have 5 more minutes, right?
Exactly. That's
great.
I was just coming to say that. Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Great, thank you. So then, I think we can reuse a lot of the components that have been around for a while in DeFi, including order books, and so there's a bunch of tooling for order books already. These are meant to move around orders for tokens and so on, but a lot of that tooling could potentially be useful for making order books in for all these kinds of primitives. And I think this one, for example, zero axis mesh, is built on Liquidity, and so it might be fairly easy to plug into something like Filecoin. I'm not sure. This might be too specific on tokens though, and like I think that they do all kinds of. Oh, there's one component that's really important here, which is all of these asks, bids, and deals need to carry some notion of verifiability. So if these are not verifiable, then these markets will get full of spam fairly quickly. So either the market is going to have to have some way of dealing with the spam, or we can make the asks, bids, and deals verifiable. And bids from clients can easily be verified by checking whether they have that many resources, or you can think of them as payment channel commitments, right? So like a bid, in a sense, that doesn't have an associated payment channel with that much committed, it might be you can describe that as like a not satisfying the requirement, and so a market can prune it out. Or similarly with miners, if a miner is kind of saying they have a huge amount of storage, but they don't on the chain, which you can see, you can also prune that out, right? And so there's ways of getting verifiability on some of the properties to allow markets to only have legitimate bids and asks and so on. And it's also, of course, like if you do automatic matching, if the market is allowed to do automatic matching with these bids and land them on the chain, or land them with miners and just kind of craft the deal, that's an even stronger level than just the verifiability of the orders. So yeah, we've talked a lot about these components. Once you have these primitives, like these bids, asks, and so on, you can start making other kinds of clearing structures like auctions and so on, and start experimenting with a lot of that. And it should be fairly easy for people to kind of take these like feeds of bids and asks and so on, and auction them and whatnot. Oh, I think one thing I forgot to mention is there is high utility in being able to place bids and asks in new market segments. So for example, if there's some region of the world that doesn't yet have a lot of storage miners, but there's clients that want more storage there, or there are miners, but they don't have the right features, having some way in in the Filecoin network for parties to register a bid or an ask that has a lot of high value. So like think of a lot of money associated with those asks or bids. That kind of like serves as an incentive or a draw to get service providers there. I think could be extremely useful, right? So we have this right now lopsided structure where there's a lot of people in some regions of the world and not a lot of people in other regions of the world, and maybe the demand might be different, like the distribution of supply and the distribution of demand might be different. And so the areas where there is a lot of demand but not enough supply, creating space for capturing those bids and having a structure that's clear with the clients to say, hey, this is a bid that will be fulfilled in the future. It's not automatic, but it's allowing those clients to express, hey, Filecoin network, we would totally use a lot of storage here if it was in this specific region and fit these specific set of conditions. And we allow the network to kind of gather these bids. And if they're legitimate bids, that will kind of cause miners to go and build out facilities and provide certain kinds of services to meet the demand, right? So having some way of expressing the features about that demand in a kind of permissionless and verifiable way, I think would be extremely useful. Yeah, and I think from there, once all these pieces are in place, then people can even start playing with, again, so Spacetime Futures or hardware features and staking and incentives for running parts of the protocol and so on. All of this can be enabled by EVM and so on. Great, I think that's it.